Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Thursday, February 13th, 2025. You are here with Robin and Scooby for our daily Bible reading. Thank you so much for being here. We are reading through the entire Bible in 1 year, and we are using the Day by Day Kids Bible. If you are just joining me and you are a grown up, please don't be discouraged by the fact that we are reading a kids' Bible. We have chosen this Bible, I should say, I have chosen this Bible because it is a great overview of the big story from all the way from Genesis through Revelation. And it's pretty detailed. It doesn't cover absolutely every detail, but it is pretty complete. And it's really great for those of us that would like to have a big picture of the whole Bible story, as well as introducing it to our kids and to those who are maybe newer in their Christian faith. The Bible itself is a pretty big book, and it can be pretty daunting a task if you look at it and say, I'll never get through that whole book. Well, this is the year you're going to do it. This is the year that you're going to get through the whole Bible, at least in a storybook form. And it's also done in chronological order. So, whereas the books in the Bible skip around a little bit in terms of what happened when, this doesn't. This consolidates, and it'll take chapters from one book and another book based upon the time frame that they occurred. And it's going to put them in time frame order so that we can see the complete picture without being confused as to, wait a minute, I thought this already happened, or why is it talking about this now when uh, now we're skipping around. It can be a little incomplete to understand that way. And not that the Bible is incomplete or should be skipped over, but this will give us a big overview picture of what it is that happened in the big story. I will always let us know the chapters that our stories are taken from today. And then if you are hungry for more, I always encourage you to head up your big Bible and check it out, because there will be some small details missing. And it can be very interesting to see the context and to what happened around it. Um, and just if God leads you to be curious, always head up your big Bible. I frequently do that because I'm leading the event and I want to understand a little bit more about what's going on so that I can give a little bit more context for those of us so that we can understand. So, thank you for being here with me today. I have my calendar. Do you have your calendar? It doesn't matter what calendar you are using, but I hope that you're marking off your daily commitment to read the Bible every day, because this will serve as a reminder, something that you can look back on and remember that this is the year that you are reading the Bible every day. And I have these gold foil stickers available for those who are interested. If you would like to have a sheet of these for the month, then I have that available as an option if you support the event. I have the calendar as a free download on my website, so you can head over to my site. I will have the link in the description below. But if you are looking for that calendar at no charge, I do have that available as a download at www.inthefamilywaycoaching.com. And you can find that under the heading of Read the Bible in 1 year. I have some drop down tabs where, if you're interested in watching any of the back episodes, I have them on video because you may be here on audio, and that's great. There's no problem with listening to this on audio. But if you would like to watch the videos, I have them up on Spotify, I have them on YouTube, and I also have them listed on my site. And you can find them under the drop down menus for the month that we're currently in. So this is currently February. I have a drop down menu for February. Now, I mentioned that if you wanted to support the event, that I would send you the sheet of stickers, and I'll also print you out a copy of the calendar. And you'll notice it's not on stark white paper. I'm using sugarcane paper. So this is paper made entirely out of sugarcane. So there are no trees involved. And I love that paper. It actually has a little bit of a thicker feel to it, and it has a pretty beige color. It's not bleached, so there's no bleach going into the environment. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that. I have the options to support the event on my Part of the Family page on my website. And I also have it as an option that if you wanted to join the live daily reading event, that is a tiered pricing event. So you are absolutely welcome to join at no cost to you at all. But if you choose to support the event by registering with any kind of a paid amount, then I will send you that calendar and the stickers as well that I mentioned. So I'm glad that you have found me today, whether you are listening via your favorite podcast. We have that on Pandora now. So let's pray that some people find us on Pandora. And I have it listed on a few other podcasting apps as well now. I've spent some time this past week connecting the podcast to some additional podcasting sites. I can't even remember them all. But I know for sure we have Spotify and we have Pandora and we have YouTube Music, and I have it on Amazon Music. I have it on Apple Music. So if you have an Apple device and you would like to listen there, you're welcome to head it up over there. I have it on Overcast. I have it on Podfriend. I have it on Podbean. I have it on Castbox. I have it on iHeartRadio. So if you are talking to a friend, you can let your friend know that whatever their favorite podcasting app is, I probably have it listed there because I've done a search for podcasting apps and I have tried to get it listed on every one of them. So thank you for finding me no matter where you are coming from. We are going to be reading today from Judges. This is the book of Judges we are starting with today. And yesterday we read about how Joshua died after being 110 years old. And we're going to find out what happened after Joshua died. And this section is entitled Enemies and Judges. And today, the first section, which comes to us from chapter 2 in Judges, is entitled Idol Worship. Judges 2. God's people followed God as long as Joshua lived. But then Joshua died, and after a time, all the leaders died. Their children grew up to become men and women, but they didn't know God. Then God's people began to worship idols. They worshiped the gods of the nations around them. They forgot God, and that made God angry. So when they went out to fight, God was against them. Their enemies would come into the land in secret. They would steal things from God's people. Then they would leave quickly. And the people were very upset. In today's society, we would call that guerrilla warfare. So God gave the people leaders to help them. The leaders were also called judges, and they would save God's people from their enemies. But soon God's people stopped listening to the judges, and they began to worship idols again. God saved his people as long as each judge lived. And God felt sorry for the people, so he was kind to them. Then God got very angry at the people when the judge died and the people worshiped idols again. God would say, "They haven't kept the special promise we made together, so I'll stop pushing out the enemy nations. These nations will test my people. I'll see if they will follow me or not." Chapter 3 in Judges, a fat king. God left some enemy nations in the land. He used them to train his people to fight. But God's people married people from other nations, and then God's people began to worship idols, the fake gods from these nations. Now the king of Aram brought his army in, and he became the king of the land. He took charge of God's people. But God's people called to God for help. So God chose a judge for them. His name was Othniel. He was Caleb's younger brother. God's spirit was upon him. This judge helped the people fight the king, and God helped them win. So God's people lived in peace for 40 years. But then Othniel died. God's people began to sin again. So God let King Eglon take over his land. And God's people had to serve this king for 18 years. At last, God's people called to him for help. So God sent them another judge. He was a left-handed man named Ehud. God's people sent their tax money to King Eglon. They chose Ehud to take the money. Now Ehud had made a sword with 2 edges. It was 1.5 feet long. He tied it to his right leg under his clothes. Ehud took the tax money to King Eglon. The king was a very fat man, and he was sitting in a room on his roof. It was cool up there. The judge gave the tax money to the king. Then the judge told the king, "I have a secret message for you. It's only for you." So the king said, "Quiet!" and he sent all his helpers out of the room. And now the king was sitting by himself. The king stood up. Then Ehud reached with his strong left hand. He pulled the sword out from under his clothes. He pushed the sword into the king's belly. Even the handle of the sword sank in. The king's fat belly closed up over it. So Ehud didn't pull the sword out. Ehud locked the doors, and he went out another way. Later, the king's servants came back, but they found that the doors were locked. So they said, "Oh, he must be going to the bathroom." The servants waited and waited, but the king didn't open the doors. At last, the servants got a key. They unlocked the doors, and they found that King Eglon was dead. Now, while they were waiting, Ehud had run away. He went to a hill country, and there he blew a horn. Then some of God's people came to him from the hills. "Follow me," said Ehud. "God has saved you from your enemy." So the people followed their judge. And that day, God's people started fighting their enemies, and they won. Then God's people lived in peace for 80 years. Another judge led the people after Ehud, and his name was Shamgar. He picked up a stick and used it for leading oxen, and he all by himself killed 600 enemy men with it. And that's the end of our reading today. Well, I'm really after the goal here every day of making sure that we have personal application and that I share with you personal application that God is using every day's reading in my life. So I want to go back to the beginning, and we want to notice that what had happened is that after God's leaders had grown old and died, and their children had not seen the wonders that God has done, they didn't remember God and they turned away from God. So it's very important for us to know that even though we may be following God, it is possible that those great grandchildren that we have, they may not remember God. This is possible. We see this in the Bible that generations will remember God and see God's wonders. And it's when they see and have faith in Him, then they are redeemed, they are connected with God. And then later on, the children's children, they forget. So we've talked about remembering and that it's very important for us to remember the things that God has done for us, and not just to remember them to ourselves, but to talk about them. We need to share God's glory. And it's not just to share God's glory, but it's to make sure that our children and our grandchildren don't forget about the amazing things that God does every day in our lives. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this event, is so that we can keep our eyes open for God doing amazing things in our life and connecting with us every single day. Because we want to remember this and take it with us. And it's only through our children seeing us do it that they will learn from the example. And kids, it's only from you watching and from learning. You have to learn how to do this yourself. So that's why I wanted to start this as a family event, because it's very important that the earlier you learn to do this, the longer these stories will stay with you and the stronger your trust in God will be. So that when you have these challenges that God will send in order to strengthen you, that you remember them as quickly as possible so that you can get through and be grown by God and do the things that He has planned out for you to do. Because every one of you has work that God has planned for you to do, not just grown-ups. God has work for everybody planned to do. You have a purpose that God has made you for, and God will use you, but He needs you to be strong for Him. And it's only through taking us through things like trials that we learn how to become better. And by remembering God, that's how we get stronger, is then when we come to these more difficult times, we draw on those, we remember those smaller times where God was with us so that we can put our trust in Him and grow stronger more, grow even stronger. We can never be too strong, and we can never be strong enough. We have to keep growing our entire lives. Just because we are 80 doesn't mean we are done growing. It doesn't mean that we are done being stronger for God. Every day, we need to continue to grow in Him. And so I wanted to point out that God sent people to be in the land just to train His people how to fight, because this generation had lived in peace for so long that they didn't know how to fight like in the army. So let's look at that again. God left some enemy nations in the land. He used them to train His people to fight. So it might have just looked like they were an annoyance and that the people had to work and that the people had to be in conflict. God was using these things for purpose. He was using everything for good. So I don't want us to be discouraged or angry or frustrated when we come across things that just look like they're bad things happening. Sometimes bad things happen because God is helping us to be stronger in Him. And so even Paul says that he looks forward to those times of trials and testings because that is how we get stronger. And I want us to see that from the very beginning, God has not changed. He was doing the same thing then, and He did the same thing in the New Testament, and He is doing the same thing now. When we have difficult times, we need to ask God, what is it you want to teach me? Because then He will open our eyes, and He will open our mind, and He will help us see what we are meant to learn. So I want you to be encouraged, no matter how little you are, that when something is hard for you, ask what it is you're supposed to learn. It's just like when your mom or dad give tasks for you to do and you say, I don't know how to do this. My dad always used to tell me, nobody's born knowing how to do anything. Did you know how to do anything when you were a baby? No. And we never stop learning how to do things. God means for us to learn, just like our mom and dad want us to learn. And God is our heavenly Father. So in the same way that our moms and dads teach us how to do things, and we have to learn how to do them, so does our Heavenly Father teach moms and dads how to do things. They haven't stopped learning just because they're your mom and dad. Secret. They don't know everything. Nobody does. And nobody was born knowing anything. We all have to learn. And we have to learn it more than once. I hate to tell you, I was always, not always, for a time period, I was like, oh, I'm going to learn everything that I need to learn so that I can be done learning it. And then once I learn it, I'll be done. But that's not the case. And we see that in today's reading. We forget. So God has to reteach us lessons. He has to bring things over and over and over again that are similar because we have to keep practicing how to do them. We have a saying nowadays that says, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that is so true. We have to keep practicing these things throughout our entire lives. So when we get frustrated that, oh, I'm having to deal with this again, they're like refresher courses. It's like when you get back to school and they start reminding you how to do adding and subtracting and what your letters were, and they give you the easy stuff first. They are reminding you. We call that sometimes a warm-up. And sometimes we just need those refreshers and those reviews because we just cannot remember everything all the time. It doesn't matter how little or how old we are. We just can't do it. So, all throughout our lives, God will give us ways to remember and to learn our lessons. And so, I want us to be encouraged on that every day. I wanted to share that God uh, was kind to them every time they came and asked. So while they would sin, I want to point out again God's faithfulness. God would be angry with them because they stepped away. And when they would come back, God was kind to them, and He always forgives us. So I don't want you to be discouraged. No matter how old we are, sometimes we can think it's too late for me to fix this. Nope, it's not. And we have another saying that says, "Oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks," or "That's just the way I am, and I'm not going to change." No. God says it doesn't matter how old we are. It doesn't matter how little we are. We can still learn. It's the heart that has to be willing to do it. And God will help us. And He will send us little things. And sometimes it seems like we have to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or maybe 3 steps back and then a half a step forward. But He's always growing us. And I don't want you to be discouraged that it's too late for you. No matter how old we are in life, it is never too old for us. And it's never too late. And I want us to remember that we will forget. That sounds funny, doesn't it? I want us to remember that we will forget. But we will. And so it's important that we maybe write these things down. And we have a system that we can use to write that down. You can share it with others. And I'm going to be bringing you in the next, hopefully, coming weeks, a wonderful design by Julie to help us remember these things. And we're working on getting that together and out to you so that you can look at these things and pass them on to your children as your own personal ark box. I'll give you a little clue there. And it's very important that we share these God moments that when God is there and does amazing things and He opens our eyes to see them, it's very important that we write these things down and share them. Things to pass on and treasure. Even if we're young, if we're old, they need to be passed down as a lasting treasure to our children and to their children so that they can refer back and see these things and be reminded and know who God is. Because we know that in the future, we will have the time of revelation. And the book of Revelation tells us that there will be things that even the believers have to go through. And so that it will be a time where those who believe must be strong in faith and just trust that God is going to bring everything to completion. These records that we may be making now of God's faithfulness and that God exists and who He is may prove very well to be very important in the future for those in our families who come in the generations ahead to experience these things that we write down and save and give testament to God's actions may very well be a source of great strength and comfort and guidance to help those descendants have faith and trust in our God at a time when they may be forgetting. So I'm very motivated to get this out and so that we can get this project out to you, our listeners, so that you can start this process. And I encourage you to write down things in a notebook right now, any way you can, to remember the things that God has done until we get this project going, where you can set up a specific system for leaving a lasting legacy. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the names. I just wanted to mention that we have a lot of these names in the Bible, like Ehud, that are difficult to pronounce. And if you have the copy of the Bible, and you read these sections in the Bible, it's spelled Ehud. And I don't know how to pronounce these things right off the bat. I wanted to say Ehud or Ehud or something, Ehud. But I have found a guy on YouTube. His name is Julian something, and I can put a link to his page. I have subscribed to his page, so you may see that as a page that I follow, maybe in my profile if you're looking on YouTube, for instance. I have to remember that there are people watching and listening other than on YouTube, since I did originally just start this on YouTube. So if you head over to my YouTube page, you may see it in the description, and I will try to put that in the description for today as well. And he has a page where he has other videos as well, but he has pronunciations for how to pronounce words. And he has a lot of the biblical names in there. And it's lovely to hear him with his beautiful French accent as he pronounces these names. And in parentheses, he has correctly. So that name is pronounced Ehud, Ehud. And that is not how I was going to say it. So I wanted to tell you that I do my research to try to read correctly to you, my audience. And that if you are interested also in pronouncing those names right, I want to give some credit where credit is due. That it's not simply me and my amazing ability to pronounce or mispronounce names. Let's see if there is anything else. That's all I have for us today. It's probably plenty long enough. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Whether you are watching or listening, whether you are here on video or on a podcast, I am so glad that God has led you here. And if you feel that your light has been lit by today's reading, then I'd like to encourage you to please click that light button. It looks like a thumbs up button, but it's a light button because you and me, we are the light of the world. And as we are told, no one lights a light and puts it under a bowl. So let's light up the world and share this event so that others can benefit from hearing about how the daily Bible reading can be applicable in their lives as well. And I hope that you are able to share this event with somebody, whether it's on your YouTube page or whether it's on your Spotify, to recommend it, whether you have followers on TikTok, wherever it is. I encourage you to please spread the word about reading God's Word. And let's help this event grow. I appreciate everybody who is here, and I'm seeing some additional people. I think every week I have at least one or two more people who have been listening. And I'm very thankful for each and every one of you. So I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and I will be here tomorrow to give our daily Bible reading. I almost forgot. I do want to say one last thing is that as part of my daily application, and in having faith in the things that we face. I was going to ask, I've been spending my morning getting ready for rain. We have a lot of rain in my area of San Diego at the moment. And I've mentioned in a previous video, a previous session, but not everybody has been here the whole time, is that God has proven faithful to me in my situation with my bedroom flooding. So I have done my diligence to make sure that I have what I have set up, like my different pumps and like that. But one of the things that I shared is that I began at one point to be very concerned, where I would say, paranoid, where I wanted to have as many pumps as possible because I was starting to rely on pumps to save me. And I had to stop and say, it is not the pumps that save me. I do have a couple of pumps in some areas, but it's not excessive, where every time it would start to rain, I would think, oh my gosh, I need to go out and buy some more pumps. I need to go out and buy some more hoses. And God has really given me a lot of peace. And so I wanted to share that with you. That as I've been preparing, I hadn't been out in my yard in a while, which might sound kind of funny, but I don't have a yard where I go out and spend time in it. It's just mostly dirt and weeds and whatever is growing. Sorry for the candor there. And so I just have to clear the areas around the pumps. And then I have a couple areas where it collects water so that I can put a pump in there to drain it away. And I didn't even have the pumps in there. So I don't know what I was doing. I don't remember where I moved them around at some point. But I just wanted to share that with you, that is part of my application, is that I do have to deal with the floodwaters periodically. And I remember one night in particular where I was up all night because the rain seems to come greater during the night than it does during the day. So please pray for me that I would get enough sleep tonight, so that I'm not overly tired tomorrow. I am going to be dropping one of my shifts tomorrow so that in the event that I'm up all night doing things and checking stuff out, that I'm not overly tired tomorrow. And uh, I remember having peace that I was praying over each area for God to protect me from flooding, and He sent me His peace, and then I knew that He was taking care of the situation. It turned out that we did flood into my bedroom anyways, but I was not discouraged by that because it was as minimal as it could have been. And the water does drain out. After it stops raining, the water has a tendency to recede. So it does empty out of my room, and I don't usually have to bring the pumps into the house all the time. I think I do sometimes, depending on the how much it is. But it's just in my bedroom because it was a garage conversion. So it sits lower than the rest of the house. And we didn't know that at the time when we bought the house. And I don't have any carpet in there. It's just plain cement now, because the carpet went with the floods the first year we were here. And now I just have I have nothing there, but I need to get tile in there. So I've done some sealing over the years and like that to try to keep water out. But there's only so much I can do, and I have to rely upon God to take me through this situation every time. And it can be exhausting because for a while there, I was flooding every holiday. One year, I flooded Thanksgiving, I flooded day after Christmas, and then it was New Year's Day, and then it was on Easter Day. One year, we just had so much rain. I flooded every single holiday. I was frustrated, and God was taking me through it. And so it just depends on the years that we have, how much rain we have. But it's just something that I have to deal with on a semi-regular basis. And now I am just simply preparing, and I'm a lot more at ease now than I used to be. Whereas getting paranoid and getting super scared about the impending rain, I am a bit concerned, but I'm not flipping out like I used to. And that is God's peace that I have with me, that He's going to take me through it regardless. And now that I have enough experience with the situation, I know what it's going to do. I know how bad it will be or won't be, the worst that it can be, because it's been pretty bad at times when we've had excessive amounts of rain. So I just pray that God sends the right amount of rain. That has become my prayer, is that God send just the right amount of rain. And that if there needs to be a lot of rain, that it go to places where it doesn't cause difficulties for people. So I wanted to share that with you, that is part of my personal application, is that God reminds me and takes me through this again and again. And so my faith in Him is building, and my maturity is growing in that. And that's not bragging for me. Let's give the glory to God for that He is growing me on that. So that is one of the things that He uses repetitively in my life to help grow me. So that's all I wanted to add. I did want to be sure and add that. And if you don't mind praying for me after you read the video, that my faith remains strong and that I not become upset while I am tired in the middle of the night. Because sometimes when we are overly tired, that is when it can become difficult, is because we are not as strong when we're overly tired, or when we are just waking up, or when we are overly hungry or something. That's why the devil tempted Jesus in the desert, because he was low on food and such like that. But just pray for me to be strong on that, and I will update you tomorrow. So I will see everybody tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Bye bye.